So in this video, we will show you how can you passing a vector through a function as the function argument. So just like array, we can passing an array to the function. So we can pass a vector to the function. So when you passing the vector through the function, you just need to pass the vector name. For example, if we already declare a vector called test, so then you want to display the vector content for the function called showVector. You just need to pass the vector name. So to declare the function to take a vector parameter, we need to specify the data type of this vector according to the element data type contained in this vector. So remember, when you want to declare a vector, you need to using the vector keyword. So the angle bracket for the data type. So that's why, for example, here we didn't show you the test, how we define the test, right? So we just say, for example, we already define a vector called test. So then the data type for the element contained in this vector is int. So that's how we declare. That's how we declare the vector. So that's why when you want to passing the vector through the function, you just need to using the vector name. However, right, you can passing a vector through the function, but the most important thing is this function show vector, they need to be declared correctly. So when you do the show vector, actually we're only expecting the vector contain integer type. So that's why when you want to define a function to passing a vector, you need to take the vector as a parameter. And the parameter data type will be the vector class name with the angle bracket and according to the data type for that vector. So for the test, actually it's the int data type, right? So that's why here in your function prototype of the show vector function, then here you need to have your parameter data type will be the vector int. So that will be our function prototype. So we declare a function called showVector. We are expecting the vector will be passed to the function, but we have different kind of vector. I only accept the vector element type is int. So that's the function prototype. You only have the parameter data type. So for the function header, of course, you need to have your parameter data type and the parameter variable name. So that's here you have the variable name, for example, is the test. When passing a vector to the function, you don't need to pass the vector size because other than array, vector actually is a class. In the class, we know the vector size because we do have the vector have the member function size. So that's why you don't need to pass the information. As long as you passing the vector object, we can using the size parenthesis member function to know how many elements in the vector. So by default, the vector will be passing by copy. Another copy of the vector will be using for the local function. So what does that mean? That means if your header, you only show the data type and the parameter variable name, right? So that's why by default, they always passing by copy. But remember, actually, the vector will be an object. So they will contain, maybe sometime will have 100 elements in there. So if you passing by copy, actually they will be very big size. So then the same thing. If you want to passing by reference from the vector, then here you need to change your function prototype to add your ampersand symbol. Did you remember what is this ampersand symbol? Right, that's mean reference, right? So that's why here, if you don't want to pass vector by copy, in order to save the memory space, because sometimes the vector is really big, we can pass in the vector by reference. So when you say passing by reference, actually just passing the location. So the location actually we only need 4 bytes or 8 bytes for the memory location. So that's why here, when you want to pass in the vector by reference, you still have your vector data type. So then we add the ampersand. So on the other hand, when you write the local the function header, so this ampersand you need to associate with your data type. So that's we mean we passing by reference. So passing by reference, on the other hand, actually will be a little dangerous because remember you passing by reference, that means I can update the content from the local function through the vector. So that's why we want you to, if your function purpose is not update the data, so that's why you can pass a read-only reference. So that's we call the COMSC keyword. So for example, this function, my purpose is only want to display the content of the vector. So then I add the constant keyword. I still have the reference. But here, when you have the const keyword, they will pass only read-only reference. So they can read the data from the vector, but they cannot change the data from of the vector. So that's how you will, the syntax, how you pass in the vector through the function. So earlier we see the show value to pass in the vector function prototype, right? But now here, actually, I want to do that with you together. So how about we try to implement this function? So I want to show you, actually, I have the solution file is in example 13, but I want to explain to you how to do that. So what you need to do is, I want you to write a function by passing a vector to display the content of the vector using a for loop. So earlier we're using the range save for loop. But like earlier, very beginning, I told you, when we're using the vector, actually we still can using the square bracket. So that's why here I want to show you how to using the square bracket to write the for loop to show value from the vector. So then we will see the example 13. In the example 13 example, I will show you how to display the vector content using a for loop. Then the other function, we will display the content of the vector, still using the for loop, but we will display reversely. So the sample output will look like this. So I have in vector, the data is 10, 20, 30 to 100. So when I call the function to display reversely, they will display from 190 to 10. So we see how we will do that. So we see how should we do that. So the first thing we see here, we have our function prototype. So we have the first function called show value. So then I will pass in the vector, but the vector only can be int data type. So I pass in by reference. So then the other function we will display the same thing. We pass in the vector by constant reference. So then we will display from the back to the front. So then you can see here in the main function, I'm using the initializer to assign the 10 elements to the vector. So then we call the show value member function. So how should we implement the show value member function? So here I want to show you one thing, syntax is about how to using the square bracket. So actually the vector, besides we can do the push back, pop back, we can using the range save for loop to display the element one by one. We also can using the vector name with the square bracket. So this square bracket, just like array, you can specify start from index 0 to size -1. So that's why the same thing as the vector. So that's why here, since we know the vector can work like an array. So if I want to display the vector element one by one, my for loop, I just need to have an index. So for example, we see the count is the index. So then the count will start from index equal to 0. Less than. Before, we need to pass in the array size, right? But now, since the size member function is belong to the vector object, so that's why the boundary will just become the vector dot the size member function. So here we have our variable name called vect. So we pass in the vector from the main function by reference, but in the local function, I'm using the vect as the vector name. So this vector name dot size, that will be the size, how many elements in the vector. So that will be our boundary. So then you will see, right, the index I still increment by 1 every time. So then you see here, I just set w's equal to 6 to display the element one by one. So that's why you can see here, when you display the array element, the vector element, they can just work like an array. We can using the index in the square bracket, and the index will start from 0 to the size -1. Just the different thing is the size doesn't need to be a constant number for the array. I can using the size from the size size parenthesis member function to get that. So after what you can see here, after we implement this show value member function, so then we run this program, you will see here we will display the array element one by one in one line. So you see they display like that. So that's your show value. So we're not finished yet, right? Because earlier I say, right, besides I want to show value for my vector from beginning to the end, I also want to implement a show reverse values. So then we will display from 100 to 10. So how you will do that? So actually they will be similar, right? So now we just implement the other function. But this function is not show value, it's show reverse values. So reverse value, I still have the array passing constant reference. So then you see here, I still using the index to refer to that. But now one thing is, I want to display from the reverse value, right? Wonderful. That's why here my count index won't start from 0. Actually, they will start from what? They will start from the vector. That's my vector name, right? Dot size. Okay, so that means total how many elements. But the last element from the vector will be the size -1. So that's why my start initial value for my index will be the size of the vector -1. So then you will see here, I start from that one. Then each time I need to decrement. So I decrement until what? Until the count. Okay, so earlier we do less than, right? So now we need to do the greater than. But because we are including the 0, so we do the count greater equal to 0. But my beginning start from the size -1. So then I decrement each time. So then you will see the vector I display the count. So then here, if I call the member function to display, I call show reverse value, they will display reversely. So then you can see the output.